All right, we want to welcome you out tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about using helper resources, which is a program, part of the FamilySearch webpage, in making a lesson for your patron. And I think it's a lesson that needs to be taught because I think a lot of us fail to use this, and it is a great tool. It allows us to really have a place where we can be organized at, and it helps us to organize ourselves to work with the patron. So with that, it's time to actually begin teaching you how to work with the patron on a one-on-one basis. So this lesson is going to teach two things. We're going to teach a tool, which is that helper resources tool, and then a process that's been having an evolution of name changes. Right now it's called a discovery experience, or a one-on-one discovery experience. It started out back in about 2018, I think it was, with Find, Take, Teach, and then that evolved into Discover, Gather, and Connect. And now we just call it a discovery experience. So we're going to talk about creating a discovery experience for a patron. And so one of the things that we got to look at here is the fact that over time you're going to be working with a lot of people, I hope. I mean, that's the idea of consultants, is that you work with, a lot of people over a period of time, maybe only one or two at a time, but over time that could become a lot of people. And you're going to need a way to keep track of what you do and how you do it, and what you've done in the past, and any thoughts you've had about what you could do in the future with them. And so you're going to want a way to stay organized. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to organize yourself so that you can do the best job possible. And one of the things that's important is note-taking or record-keeping, whatever you want to call it, so that you do have a record of what you've done with the patron, what you're going to do with the patron, and how you're going to do that. And so, I mean, we can keep these notes on paper, but then you have to keep track of the paper. And that's always been my problem. I take notes on paper and then I can't find the paper 6 months later when the patron wants another lesson and I can't remember what I did the first time. And so this will help provide a better way for that. And that better way is the program called Helper Resources. It's a built-in program in FamilySearch that was designed for you and I as consultants.
You and me.
Okay, and this is the tool that we're going to use to assist us in working with members. It's designed to help us in several different ways. One, it provides many discovery activities for your patron. And I might just say, not every patron's going to want a lesson on their ancestry or descendancy. Some patrons are not going to be interested in that. We try to accept that and take them from where they're at. And so this program, Helper Resources, can also provide you with a lot of other kinds of discovery activities. We're not going to focus on those in these lessons. We're going to take the hard route, the hardest thing, which is to actually help the patron do a little research and help you see that it's not really that hard. Okay, a second thing it's designed for is to provide us with numerous ways to study our patrons' trees. Remember, these are trees we're not familiar with, most likely. And so we need a way to learn what makes up this patron's tree. And the program is designed in such a way that it will actually help us to really get a feel for what the patron has for a pedigree by using Helper Resources. It also has links to excellent training videos and all the things about your calling. We've talked about that before, but we'll bring it up again today, just so you remember. And it includes ways to create and store notes and lessons for the people that we work with. I did a lesson just a week ago, and I printed out the lesson. I made 2 copies, one for me and one for the patron, right out of the Helper Resources lesson plans. So the patron had a copy of exactly what we were doing, and she'd have it when I leave. Okay, so where do you find this helper resources? When you go to sign in, and you've signed in, you have the home page on FamilySearch, and down or up at the top, I should say, you're going to find the little circle with the question mark in it, which is the help button. And you're going to click on that. And then in the drop down, you go to helper resources. And you'll get a page that looks something like this. Okay, the right-hand side of helper resources is the things for you as a consultant. It's going to have recent articles that will help us with researching and learning about our calling, learning about researching in different areas and things that are available and new ideas, what's new at FamilySearch, all those kind of things. And where you start to see the pictures down below there, some specific links to things that are specific for your calling. And if you're registered as a consultant, you'll be able to see those on this page. Also on the right-hand side will be a thing called the planner. Everybody has this, and everybody's actually in there. I have my own planner right here. I can see this stuff for me. So if I want to test it out, I don't happen to actually have to get a patron to work with. I can do it on myself. And so I can just look at my own planner, or I can click on add someone and we can add somebody to the planner. And that's what you want to do. You want to get your patrons involved here and enroll them in this so that you can be their helper. Okay, so let's talk about using the helper resources. Okay, to help people in helper resources, you first have to add them in to the helper resources. If you do it by going to the little lifesaver symbol on the main page or on any page like in Tree where it says helper, you can click there, but then every time you want to do this, you have to go there, and then you're going to have to either remember some combination of their name, their username, their birth date, and their helper number, because there's two different ways to do it. But the point is, every time you go in, you're going to have to go through that, and you're not going to have the resources that we have here. It'll just be, you'll see their tree as them. Now, the one thing to remember too, if you're not familiar with it, a helper is a person who can view the patron's tree as the patron sees it. And that's important so that you know exactly what the patron is seeing out there. And with permission, you could make changes in the tree for the patron if they were asking you to do so. Normally, the whole point of what we're doing is just to see their tree. But sometimes they might not be real computer literate and they may ask you to do some things. And if you go in as their helper and do it, it leaves their name as the contributor, not yours. But the one thing you don't ever want to do is go make changes without asking them first. And the other thing too that's tricky is you can't help someone who has never created a FamilySearch account. This won't work if they don't have a FamilySearch account, because the first time they sign into FamilySearch, it creates a record for them and associates it with their membership, in this case, if you're LDS. And then when you go in to be their helper, it knows where to take you to help them. Until that happens, you can't really help them. So you may have to go in and help the patron register at FamilySearch and get in at least once before you go in to help. That's always something to think about. Okay, now when you're in Planner, you really want to use this, because what's going to happen is you're going to add a person to your list so that you can be their helper. And by doing it through this tool, it will allow you to use this tool for a year and not have to go ask them or sign them up again. All you do is click on their name and it takes you straight to their tree in the planner. It takes you to their planner page. That's the big value of this. You can go look at that person's record 5 times in a week by just clicking on their name each time you go in, and it takes you right there. You don't have to worry about signing up. One thing I will recommend is what you do is when you do this process, I always either text or call the patron and say, hey, I'm sending you a link. You need to click on it. You'll either find it in your email or your text or whatever. And please respond to it so that I can be able to use your account. Because that way it seems to work. If you don't, half the time it seems like they never find it. It's interesting how many of our friends don't look at their emails or their texts on a regular basis. Okay, so to use this tool, all you have to do is click Add Person. Now I'm using the web page view right now. And if you click on Add Someone, it's going to allow you to go either to your ward or stake directory and pull up a person through the directory and then send them the link that they click on, and then you're able to view their account. Notice it only works for your ward and stake. If they're outside that, you will be able to just get a link and then email it to the person, and they'll have to, I'll take that back. You wouldn't be able to do it here. On this, you wouldn't be able to. But if you had to do that, what you want to do then is you need to use your smart device and go to the tree app and go to the menu on it and go to help. And there's a link there for helper resources. This helper resources is a little bit different. It allows you to do add someone, but it also allows you to just send them an email or a text, or do it by typing in like their full name, their birth date, and their helper number, like you would if you were out on the web using the Lifesaver helper link. But you use it here and it puts you in as their helper for a year, just like it would if you did add someone. And so that's a nice addition. I had forgotten about that till I went to rewrite this lesson and realized that they've set up the smartphones and smart devices a little bit different than the web page. So it's giving you a little more leeway if you enter them in through your smart device. Okay, so now you've got them signed in. Now from there on, all you have to do if you want to work for Carolyn, you just click Carolyn's name and it takes you into her resources page. Okay, so what can you do using helper resources specifically? Okay, this page has a menu down the left-hand side. I have skipped over Discovery Ideas. Discovery Ideas has all those cool things you can use that aren't research related. Things that could be like picture yourself and your ancestors that were missionaries or ancestors that served in the war. You know, a lot of these campaigns that have come out in these Sunday mailings. It also has an extensive list of people in that person's tree who are green temples that are eligible to be reserved. It also will show you lists of people who have hints that can be clicked on. So it has some good things. We're going to skip over that because we're focusing on doing research. And so we're moving over to the tree link, which brings us to a fan chart. You really want to use the fan chart. And the reason for it is that it allows you to do some things you can't do anywhere else. It's very interactive. Its interactive ability was designed so that when you're in the helper resources, you can do these things, but they allow it out there on the tree all the time. You can do this with anybody's fan chart at any time when you can pull the fan chart up. It has 7 different versions, and you get to them by clicking on the little down arrow next to fan chart, and you'll see the list. and it will allow you to click on the different things. So right now it's just on family lines. It's the standard fan chart that we all see. And this happens to be for one of the patrons that I've had in the past. Now, a lot of people don't realize that there are other versions of this. By clicking on the down arrow, you can then go to birth country, and using the little key over here, you can find the countries of birth for the people based on what it says in tree. When it doesn't have a place of birth, it stays white. For the United States, it's always blue. So you can see that this person has quite a bit of blue, but in this wedge over here, this is Sweden. Whoops. What's going on here? Get back on the right page. This is Sweden. And we have up in here, British Isles, essentially. We have a little wedge here of Sweden. This was Italy, excuse me. This down here was Italy. And then we have a little bit of Sweden here. We have Falkland Islands for one person, and a little bit of England here. And so you can kind of see where they're coming from. And these are all things you want to look at because you may not feel very comfortable researching in other countries. So you're going to want to know what part of their tree is US, because that'd be the part you'd probably want to focus on. You don't want to try to find people in Italy if you have no idea what you're doing. Okay, the next one is sources. The darker the color, the more sources. A real dark yellow or orange is 10 or more sources. And so you can kind of see, based on the color, how much activity's gone on that part of the tree. And it's very obvious that this section here, this half of the tree here, is a very heavily researched part of this person's pedigree. That's the lesson I'm learning. Okay, areas that have no, people that have no sources are being white, and people that have just a few will have the lighter colors. Okay, the same basic thing for stories. This might be useful if the person wants to learn about their ancestors. You can point them easily using this tool to people that have stories attached and memories. And you can see here that there's a lot of people that don't have any stories in this section of the tree. And interesting, it's not going backwards. Going forward, it's going backwards. This part of the tree over here doesn't have much either. And this is very common that the closest people to us tend to not have stories. And that'd be a good thing if you've got somebody that likes to write, to try to encourage them to write life stories for their parents or grandparents, people that they might have known that don't have any stories attached. And then photos, you'll usually find more photos than you will stories. But again, the general idea is this is giving you a feel for how busy and active that part of the tree is. Then there's research helps. The blues are record hints. These are all people that have record hints showing on their person page. The reddish color is data problems. These are people where there's some kind of a data problem that needs to be fixed. And if there's purple, and there's 4 people with purple over here, these are people where the system is giving you some research suggestions. Again, this kind of gives you a feel for where work needs to be done on a tree. Of course, we've already established, even though there's a lot of hints here, these are mainly the people that all have 10 hints already anyway. Okay, and then the last version is the one that's really germane to us, which is ordinances. Now, somebody like this is probably one sealing ordinance of some kind that somehow got missed, or a merge, a bad merge has caused a opening for a sealing to be done, which usually means it probably really isn't needed out there. But very obviously, this part of the tree has a lot of work that needs to be done. The orangey colored ones are people that need more information. And I can just see, looking at this, most likely these people don't have any dates or places, so they're not going to be eligible for temple work yet. So after looking at all that stuff, the bottom line is this. You're going to look at it and you're going to say, okay, based on what I've been seeing, I want to work in one of those two triangular areas on this tree, because those are the two places in this tree where it appears the most work needs to be done and it would be the easiest to do. And so that's kind of what you're doing with this tree, is you're using it to help guide you to where you might want to work. And of course, if I was interested in, say, doing US research, then I'd look at these people and try to figure out which section of these red triangles have people from the US. And as I recall, it would be over here where the Scott family is, because they were US, this little area right in here. Okay, now, next thing down on that menu below tree is notes. And this is a place where you can put notes in and it'll stay there. And so in this case, I was working with a patron, and we found some interesting things because we found the person's social security information, giving birth and death. And the patron said that this person was baptized over in Zacatecas, Mexico, on a certain date, and was a child of Juan Rodriguez and Maria Saba Rodriguez. But when we went looking in the Mexico records, we found this person with the same exact birth date over in San Juan, Guanajuato, Mexico, who's the son of a Juan Rodriguez, but a Ruperta Vasquez. And so I made a note so that I could contact the patron and tell the patron, hey, you need to go talk to your family and see if any of this makes sense to them. And I now can't, it's been 5 years or so since we did this. I don't even remember what the final upshot on that was. But see, that note's still in there. So it's there. If I ever worked with this patron again, I'd have that note there. Then the next thing down from there are lesson plans. And this is the blank, well, it's not blank now, but this is the lesson plan form that they give us. And we'll show you that today because we're going to go through a lesson and prepare it, go all the way through making up a written out lesson plan. And this will be kept in that patron's file permanently. Okay, so let's prepare a lesson for a patron. First thing, let's try to remember, this is one thing that's tricky about all this. You're going to be working in real time in tree, but you really, as you build this person's tree
Pedigree.
in your mind, you're not going to be able to put it in tree. You can't put it in tree as you're working, because then the patron wouldn't have the opportunity to experience this firsthand. You're going to probably need to be doing this either electronically in some, word processing file or something, or on paper, so that you have a record of what you're finding and you have a way to remember where you found stuff. And then as you're doing this, you're going to want to periodically check in tree, because we all know that if I start with maybe the patron has just a name, yeah, most likely that name's not going to have any possible duplicates. But every time we add information to that name, it's going to bring up the opportunity for a duplicate to appear. And the worst thing you want to do is, okay, you do all this researching and stuff, and then you bring this lesson over to the patron, and the patron starts doing it. And right away, right off the bat, after the first thing you find, the thing pops up, oh, here's a duplicate. And when you click on it, it's already got everything done. And the patron doesn't really get a chance to, experience the joy of finding something new. And so you don't want to say, okay, hey, I found these names. We're going to be able to do the temple work. And then after 5 minutes, we discover, oh, it's already in there and the work's all done. So you want to, as you work on this, you're going to have to go back periodically into probably the find feature and search for the person and people that you're finding, making sure you don't find duplicates. Or if you do find duplicates, hopefully maybe the duplicates don't have any work done either. And we'll see that even today in today's lesson. But let's get into that. Okay, so we're going to do a partial tree lesson. My patron doesn't have a full tree. So that's why instead of worrying about cousins, we're going to look for ancestors, because that's really the fun stuff anyway, right? And many of us can't do that because our trees are pretty full back quite a ways. Okay, so here's my patron with a lot of stuff redacted with little gray boxes. And you can see this patron does not have a full tree. Oh, I got to change the spelling of the last name. It's Garcia.
And Mexican.
So, no matter how many times you proofread, you miss things. So I looked at things and I wasn't excited because this is a tree that essentially there's, I think, 9 people born in America. And after that, you're either in Czechoslovakia, Sweden, Hungary, Austria, the Czech Republic, or it doesn't show on the list of things, Mexico. So I said, okay, I'll take Mexico, partly because it's one of the shortest parts of the tree right now anyway. And so we're going to work over here on Manuel Garcia. And that will be a challenge for me because I am not an expert on researching in Mexico, where I'm going to have to go. Okay, so this is Manuel Garcia. We're going to go from what we know to the unknown. Okay, and he has right now, he's got 2 parents listed and they just have names and nothing else. What it says about Manuel is that he was born in 1929 here in California, died in 1999 in Pine Top, Arizona. I'm very familiar with Pine Top. I had a sister that lived there in the winter or in the summers. And he has 2 sources, and one of them is that Nunament source, which is essentially it's the Social Security death index, or actually it's a Social Security application form that they actually add the death date to and stuff like that. First found it over on Ancestry, and now FamilySearch has it also. What's nice about this is it does show us where the parents' names, Emilio Garcia and Mary Chias, where these names came from. So we know that the patron added those names from the Social Security record for Manuel. Also, it's interesting that in the Social Security record, it says that he was born in Long Pine, California. I don't believe there's a Long Pine. The system says, or somebody has entered Alpine, but I think more likely it's Lone Pine over in Inyo County. But who knows? He was born in California. So what we're going to do, because it's so nice on this person's page over there under research help, it said 1950 census. Now he's 21 years old at this point, 20 or 21. So this might be an interesting source. It's new to us. The patron hadn't seen this because the last time the patron worked, this record wasn't available. So we went to it, and lo and behold, it shows Manuel in the home of his parents with his siblings. And in tree, there's just Manuel and his parents' names, and that's all there is for the family. So the information on Manuel agrees. It says he was living in Sparks, Nevada, which is where he should be. It shows his parents, it gives their approximate ages and the fact that they were born in Mexico. So we know where we're headed for the next generation. And it lists 5 siblings that aren't in tree. So what we did is we entered all these people into tree, and I sent my patron out to visit with her mother and see how much her mother knows about these 5 siblings of her father. my patron's grandfather. Okay, so now, how am I going to keep track of all this stuff? Well, one of the things I'm doing, if you forget about that death certificate and look at just the left-hand side of the screen, I started a word processing document, and I'm using color. I put in black what was in tree for Emilio to begin with. All it had was Emilio Garcia, married to Mary Chias, and a child, Manuel, and I put Manuel's information there. In red, I entered everything we learned from the 1950 census, the approximate year and place of Emilio's birth, Mary's birth, the fact that it said about 1930 in California for Manuel off the census, and the 5 siblings. Okay, so then, it's like, where do we want to go next? Well, I thought, let's try to see if we can find something on Emilio Garcia. I discovered when I looked at the 1950 census, I went back and did a search for Emilio Garcia in 1950, even though it was already showing it to me, because I was curious how many Emilio Garcias I'd find in the Sparks, Reno area. There was one. That was it. So I thought, well, if it's that odd, let's go look at newspapers.com and see if I can get an obituary maybe. And sure enough, there's a March of 1960 obituary where it says that he died on the 20th of March based on the fact that the newspaper was on a Monday and he died on Sundays. So it was the 21st for the newspaper, so he died on the 20th. It says that he was born in Durango, which is a state in Mexico, and gives his birth date, May 25, 1904. Said that he lived in the Sparks, Reno area for 30 years. So probably about from 1930 to 1960. It gives a listing of who he survived by, his wife's name, and the names of his 4 sons and 2 daughters. And unfortunately, what's missing is nothing about his parents or siblings. But hey, you can't be, beggars can't be choosy. So from that obituary, we've got a lot more information. What can we do next? Well, I went looking at FamilySearch and nothing really came up when I did a search for him off of his person page. Because Emilio just didn't show up with anything definitive. So I know Ancestry has great hints. Sometimes they're wacky and they're not accurate, but they provide a lot of hints a lot of times, and most of them are pretty good. So I thought, well, I'll go over to Ancestry and look at the 1950 census and see what it tells us. We'll be looking for an Emilio born about 1904 in Mexico, living in Sparks, Nevada. So we went over there, and what could I find? Well, right away, I found a World War II draft card for Emilio Garcia in Sparks, Nevada. And it's got the right birth date. It's got the exact same birth date that we've been looking for. And it doesn't just say Durango, Mexico, but it gives the name of the town, La Purísima. La Purísima is a village in Durango. And so now we have an actual place. When you're doing research in other countries, that is the real key factor. That's the only new thing we pick up off this card, really of major importance. You work for the Southern Pacific, but besides that, it didn't really pick up much news on there. We got an address, but that's about it. Okay, but it verifies Durango and adds the town. Now we have a full place. So now you can see using the draft card, I've added the little village to the place of birth. So now the question says, okay, what else? Well, looking at Ancestry, they have Nevada death certificates. I didn't even know that. They have death certificates in Nevada from 1911 to 1965. and he died in 1960. His death certificate is there. And of course, what could we gain from this? Well, it proves his birth date. We've got that. He was a mill worker in lumbering. He was born in Durango, but here's the gold mine, the big bonus. The parents' names, Anastasio Garcia and Rita Rivera. Now I know when I go looking for a record for Emilio, who the parents should be on the record. Most of the records we're going to look at will name parents. And so we have parents' names. This is usually so hard to get. And this is so nice that everything's falling together with 3 records or so. We're really on the path to solving what we need. Okay, so now I've added Anastasio and Rita here from the death certificate. And since we're over at Ancestry already anyway, we might as well just stay there looking to see if we can find anything that pertains to Emilio's birth. And sure enough, there's 2 kinds of records in Mexico that you're going to spend most of all your time in, actually 3. There's the 1930 census, but we're not going to need that for this. There are church records, the Catholic Church especially, because almost 99% of the people in Mexico belong to the Catholic Church, or at least used to. And back to about 1825 or so, there are civil registrations, just like us, state and national birth and death records and marriage records. So you're going to have church records and registration, civil registration records. This happens to be a civil registration birth. It names a slightly different place. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. This is actually a metropolitan area in Durango. And that La Purísima is a village in that locality. So it all fits together, same birth date, Anastasio, but then they got a different mother's name. I thought, what in the heck is going on here? I had all kinds of ideas. Maybe there was a second marriage and things like that. At first, all I could do is just, assume there was some kind of a problem here. Well, as I researched it more, I looked at the original for that record, and the record itself does not name the mother, which is unusual. So when it has the father's name, and following that, it names the godparents. Well, it happens to be that there's 2 sets of godparents, the parents of Anastasio and the parents of Rita. And so what they did is they just picked up the name of Rita's abuela, grandmother, on her father's side and made her the mother, moved her up a generation, and essentially said that Maria de Jesus Flavella was the wife of Anastasio, when in fact she's the mother of Anastasio. That's what happened. Later on, we found a church birth record, baptism record, and even another civil registration record that showed the right mother. So we stayed with Rita. Everything else was okay, but every once in a while you're going to run into strange things like that. Okay, so this was that civil registration record with the error on the mother's name from Durango, Mexico Civil Registrations. Here's his marriage record to Maria de Jesus. I don't know how to pronounce that one either. It doesn't matter, his wife, but it names his parents, Anastasio Garcia and Rita Rivera. So everything's fine. It says his birth's about 1906, was really 1904. But this is really, at this point, we've got everything we need to put Emilio together on the screen with his wife. We've got Emilio and his wife. His wife's a little harder to find information on, but at least we've got a approximate year of birth and place of birth. We know she lives in Durango because she married in Durango. I believe her parents are named on this record. If I click on her name, then it gives her parents. So we have her parents' names too. I haven't exhausted that search yet. Okay, so at this point, I'm basically done with my research. I'm ready to put together a lesson for the patron because when we first looked, there was no duplicates for Emilio. When we finally get to this point, I will tell you we found some duplicates, but that's okay. And we'll show you why. But we now can fill out our Emilio and his wife with as much information as we can. And even fill in now his mother and father and her mother and father. And, you know, we added the brothers and sisters. So I took this note that I've been keeping and I saved it in a folder I have and then referenced it over here in notes saying, see my, you know, Office 365 note in, then I named the file and I blocked that out just for privacy's sake so that, you know, I know where to find it. And then I went down and I wrote up the lesson plan. It'll automatically fill in the date. I can put the name of the family I'm working for here. Name the specific thing this lesson's about. It's about the Emilio Garcia family. And if I click on a relationship path, what it's going to do for me is it's going to take from my patron, which is this big gray box, and show you the path back to the person that is the primary person for this lesson, Emilio. And it puts it right there for you so that you have their ID numbers and everything. You know exactly where it is. Now, we're only talking about great-grandfather. So, you know, that's not a big deal. But if you were back 7 or 8 generations, you might need something like this for the patron. And then the actual lesson itself, I went through step by step explaining what we were going to do, where it would come from, what we would find, and all of that. When I was finished with the lesson, and I told the patron, okay, now, in all honesty, I got to be honest with you, Emilio and his wife are already in tree. But it's okay because they come in with their whole pedigree. In fact, this is what it looks like. This is Emilio's pedigree. This is Mexico, by the way. This is impressive. And then this is his wife. And the interesting thing was they were both at that point in the pedigree that people didn't know a lot about them. And they didn't even have them married, but they were both in tree. And so once we connected them with our Emilio and his wife, then the whole thing's put together. And they had knew so little about him that the temple work still needed to be done, even though they were in tree. Nobody had bothered to do the temple work because they didn't really have good information on him yet. Nobody had ever bothered to, you know, flesh them out. And so I thought that was really interesting. I'll tell you, it's only been 2 weeks since my patron has seen this. She's already found over 100 names to reserve. She's gone crazy. And there's still tons more that can be done. A lot of this is being done, but there's people missed here and there. Several of her direct ancestors still needed some work. And so, and you can see there's still more people to find. So it's really been a fun experience for the patron. Fun for me too. because I feel a lot more comfortable now trying to do research in Mexico. Of course, this was pretty easy. I got very lucky. Okay, so in review, this lesson's demonstrated how to use that consultant planner to help you plan the lesson. Your challenge, if you've never done one of these before, would be to try one out for yourself. Try it out on yourself. Pick an ancestor of yours that needs work and put together a lesson and practice writing up a lesson plan and practice writing up some way, keeping track of the records and where they come from. And then next month, in our second lesson of the month, we will try going the other direction. We'll use the descendancy report to find cousins. And for any of you that are new to these presentations, I put a link here for where you can find our blog. And on the blog, you'll be able to find links to all the past lessons and to PDF files of these slides. For those of you that have been invited to this class, you'll be receiving a link that will show you a link for the presentation and a link for the slides. So you don't need to write it down, but our blog is found at blogspot.com, and it's just under Fresno North Stake Family History Center. It's got an old-fashioned name because I haven't had the guts to change it because I know it's going to break the link that most people know. But Fresno North Stake Family History Center, and then .blogspot.com. So questions? We're at that point.
I have one. I always have one.
That's okay.
When you were talking about Lone Pine or the place he was